feeling for me.
You're watching the Action Sports Jax 24/7 network. Now it's time for the Brent Austen Show.
Well, goodbye to Christian Kirk for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And, hey, listen, I got a lot. I'm going to miss him. I'm a big fan of Christian Kirk. Good dude, great dude. Pro's pro. Everybody says that. I think everybody knows that. I think he's a big part of the Trevor Lawrence growth in Jacksonville. And I know that looks a little, what does that actually mean? But coming off 21 and into 22, I think Zay Jones and Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram are a big part of that, along with Doug Peterson, the staff. Like, you just have to give them credit for helping him out after that rough year, that rough rookie year, kind of stabilize things. And here's the other part. It still hit me like they're getting rid of a good player. I watched someone put out 15 minutes of highlights from Christian Kirk.
I watched the whole thing.
And I did too. And I don't usually do that. And, I mean, first of all, 2022, Christian Kirk and this offense didn't feel so different. You see how many games were 22 and where he was lining up and where he was catching the ball and just different stuff that they were doing with him. And, of course, 23 and 24 are disjointed because of injuries. But just looked a lot different, felt a lot different. But he was good. I mean, he was a big part of it. You know, that's the thing. He was a big part of it. And this organization, quite frankly, over the years, hasn't had much of a right to cut good players.
Yeah.
So I'm not sitting here saying that it's the wrong decision. I get it's a business. I get there's dollars involved. I get you can also improve and get better. But we're not talking about a 32-year-old guy. Okay? So what they do next is pretty interesting. How does this impact their offense? They've got to make a right move, right? This is part of that series of right moves. This is a decision maybe that a lot of franchises would have made, but for this franchise to get rid of a productive player, and quite frankly, the way receiver salaries are, I think he was going to get paid $15 million this year.
Not that bad.
Not that bad. Not that bad. So, again, I'm not being critical of the organization here. I think everybody's on board with whatever the organization wants to do. They've got the keys. I think there's a lot of faith in where this is going. That is all good. And I'm cool with that. But I also just think you've got to admit that this organization getting rid of productive players is still a little bit like, okay, should they do that? You know? I mean, so we'll see how it lands. And you're going to always be open to criticism. You got to make some tough calls in this business. And by the way, the good organizations also make tough calls like this, and they win on these decisions. Last year, the Jaguars in the receiver position fell into a good decision. And you know me, like I think you give credit to guys no matter what. Like, people say, "Oh, you can't give credit to anybody for picking Trevor Lawrence." Like, well, it's on their thing. I mean, like well, they were lucky to be. Lucky's better than good sometimes, folks. So lucky's better than good. But I think they fell into the whole Calvin Ridley situation that went bad into Brian Thomas Jr., which was good scouting, evaluation, draft manipulation, right? So that was the good part of it. Now, do they do that again? Whatever this looks like, in free agency, in the draft, and there's some stories out there that they asked him to take a pretty major pay cut and restructure and didn't want to do it. And that's his, their teams, that's a hard thing to ask players to do. To restructure, especially if it's going to cost them quite a bit. I actually thought when they did go to him for that kind of conversation, he would be open to it, realizing that he had missed 14 games over the last couple of years. But it's also like, it ain't my money. And honestly, they could pay him and be okay. But it might be better off to let him go, and that will all depend on what happens next. That'll depend on the emergence of Parker Washington. That'll depend on, do they go get somebody else? Do they find another draft pick star? That'll all depend on those things and how this offense looks. So there's a lot that goes into the Christian Kirk move. But it's okay to say, and wow, man, I think that guy, that guy's 1,000-yard plus guy every year in Jacksonville if he stays healthy.
Yeah.
Like he is that. And he's really good in that position. He's a technician. And again, those highlights kind of confirm that once again. Catching balls all over the place. So, hey, I always do this on the Kirk stuff. And it's really interesting that DK Metcalf report came out that he wants a trade. Mm-hmm. And I think it's wild to me that people get so enamored with Metcalf because he's a physical beast and he's different, right? He's an imposing player and a different player. But I remember when the Jags signed Kirk, and I think obviously I was on the radio side at this time, and the Jags signed Kirk for that contract. People were like, "What in the world? They paid that much money with that contract, right?" And now it looks like a bargain, quite frankly, those kind of dollars. But at the same time, I think Metcalf had got a big deal, or right around that time, and I think he was making something like $24 million. And so I compared the numbers, and the numbers were really similar.
Really?
Now they're two different guys, in my opinion, the way they play, obviously body types, all this stuff. But it was just interesting to me that if you said DK Metcalf to people, you're like, "Yeah, that guy's an alpha, number one," like all this stuff. And then you did Christian Kirk at the same time, the numbers were very similar. Like, I think Kirk might have, even after the first year, had better numbers in 22. So I actually looked that up again today because of the DK conversation. Mm-hmm. And again, I will go with perception is a little bit inflated over reality. If I ask you, hey, DK Metcalf's on the block, if you could get him for a third, what do you say?
For a third? How much money do I have to pay? I'll come back to that.
What's his contract? He's already, does he want a new deal? Because he was under contract, so he wants to probably rip it up.
Yeah, he probably wants a new one.
So he wants, what, a $30 million deal, $28 billion deal, those kind of things?
Because he's supposed to, this is the last year of his deal. He's supposed to make $18 million this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he wants a new deal. Yeah. So anybody who's going to trade for him is going to, like, they're talking like a third-round pick. Now, somebody said a first and a third. They ain't getting a first-round pick.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like, that's nuts. But if you did trade for him, like, is that the route to go? Like, if you got DK, let's just say, forget about the money. You get DK Metcalf, does that excite people? People get excited about T. Higgins, right?
Yeah.
Does that get you fired up? I think it would get the fan base fired up.
100%.
Right?
It would.
Does it help you a lot, like DK Metcalf and Brian Thomas Jr.?
That's good luck, safeties, covering that up. But, again, like, it doesn't make sense for me to cut a good player to try and save money and then go spend more money to go get somebody else.
Yeah, there's definitely that. There's definitely that going on. So here's what I say. 97 career games for DK Metcalf, 6,300 yards, 48 touchdowns. That's a significant number here in this conversation, all right? And I'm not trying to sell you that like Kirk is better, but Kirk has like 93 career games, 5,200 yards or something like that, and 29 touchdowns. So I just threw a lot of numbers at you. The difference in games is like 4 games, and obviously Kirk has been hurt the last couple of years significantly. The difference in yardage is about 1,000 yards, maybe 1,100, and the difference in touchdowns is like 19. So, but I just think like the perception of it, like what you would trade, what you would pay, and everything else. To your point right there, like if you're this morning, you're saying, hey, well, let's go get DK Metcalf, and he's available. It's like, okay, you're going to give up a draft pick to go get DK Metcalf, and you're going to go spend $28 million a year or something to pay him. Something crazy. Well, is that big a difference between having a guy like Kirk that you just cut, to your point? Like, so why go spend that kind of money on the guy? The best way to do it is most likely, go get a younger player, just like you did with Brian Thomas Jr. You just had success doing that. And you could certainly do that again. Let's welcome in Austen Lane. He's in Wisconsin and checking in on a Thursday with us.
Same shirt. I apologize, but hey, it's going to be the same shirt for the next couple of days, man. Just got to bear with me.
Hey, like I always say during the summer 3-shirt days, it ain't smell-o-vision.
Oh, yeah. No, hey, for sure, without a doubt. And listen, I am pushing what is humanly possible, going on back-to-back nights, about 3 hours sleep, man. But we're all good. We're plowing through. No caffeine, no coffee needed. Ready to talk about what has transpired the past 24 hours. And I come into DK Metcalf going to Jacksonville. Let's go and get that pipe dream out of our heads right now, gentlemen, because that's not going to happen. And let's focus on the task at hand, which could be maybe another player like, I don't know, maybe a slot guy like we talked about yesterday a little bit during the whole Daniel Griffiths conversation that we had, which leads me to believe I feel like me and Daniel Griffiths have been talking to some of the same people in a group chat, but we'll address that later.
Well, why address it later? Address it now. Who are we talking about?
Well, we talked about it yesterday with Cooper Kupp. You know, we talked about some of the analytics of what was missing last year, and in terms of where on the field were the Jaguars not connecting with, right? And we talked about how, I mean, the slot receiver and those short to intermediate passes down the middle of the field, where sometimes it's hard to diagnose exactly what type of defenses, teams are in. That's what was lacking last year. And I think that Liam Cohen, that's the one spot that they have to address. And not having Evan Ingram and not having Christian Kirk and not having him be 100% was a huge factor going into that decision. And I think, like I talked about yesterday a little bit, a guy like Cooper Kupp, who, has really made his name out of the slot, not really being a deep threat guy per se, but being a guy who can run the route tree, who can do those short to intermediate passes, who's a reliable catcher, can maybe only help your team in terms of taking care of that part of the field, as opposed to a DK Metcalf who, and listen, I'm not going to compare him to Gabe Davis because they're different players, but you say the word DK Metcalf, or the words DK Metcalf, the name DK Metcalf, and it's almost like he's closer to what Gabe Davis is in terms of big playability, running those deep balls, as opposed to a guy who can run the route tree in the middle of the field and get you, 10 yards here, 15 yards here. DK Metcalf is more of that explosive big play wide receiver. And I would much rather see them go in a direction where you have a possession receiver and spend maybe a little less money than bringing in a guy who can take the top off because, well, that's what we wanted from Gabe Davis.
Yeah, I think that's really why we got on the Metcalf train, is to really just say, no thanks.
We got on the Metcalf train to get off the Metcalf train.
Yeah. Well, because I think Metcalf is, my point in this is Metcalf's always been like a sexy player to kind of say, hey, sign me up, man. That dude in a uni looks like we could go beat some people up, right? And by the way, he's a good player. Like, I'm not trying to say good players are good players, but I don't really know if he's a superstar player. Like Hammies Burner says, DK and AJ Brown are the same type of player in mind. They're the same looking player. AJ Brown's better. Like, he just is, in my opinion. Now, I mean, maybe DK can still get there, but you think DK Metcalf's better than AJ Brown, or same ilk of AJ Brown?
I mean, if you put DK Metcalf in that Eagles offense with Jalen Hurts throwing the football and not a Geno Smith, I mean, I think you could have some pretty good comparisons, yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe he can. Like, again, I'm not down on DK. I just think people elevate DK Metcalf to almost like Jamar Chase and those kind of guys' status because of the way he looks.
Well, okay, but here's how I look at it. I think you have a guy like AJ Brown. When he complained, what happened? he had the fantasy breakout, 3 or 4 weeks where the dude just went off. When DK Metcalf complained, what happened? What's up, Jackson Smith-Njigba? We're going to give you some more routes. We're going to give you some more targets. What's up, Tyler Lockett? We still got you here as well. And you know what? Let's run the ball a lot, too, because we're going to do that. Like, I think that's the difference, right? And I think that's why DK Metcalf wants out of Seattle. Because when you look at, and you talk about a diva, but just say a number one wide receiver, when you go out there and say, I'm not getting the ball enough, what are you going to do about it? The Eagles made the difference. And keep in mind, the Eagles were still winning. And A.J. Brown was on the sidelines reading a book complaining. But they still got him the ball somehow because that's what great teams do. DK Metcalf was complaining. What do? We'll try, but you're not bigger than the team, right? So I think that's the fundamental difference. Now, what does it look like if DK Metcalf gets 10, 12 targets a game like A.J. Brown seemed to get for those couple weeks when he was kind of pissed off? I'm not sure, but I think it's more comparable than we give it credit for just because of the team that A.J. Brown's on and also who's throwing the football.
Yeah, so, listen, those are all good thoughts, and we'll see where it lands. The Cooper Kupp stuff is fascinating. Looks like we're getting some word in that Mitch Morse retired, which wouldn't surprise me too. So let's try to confirm that. But somebody's throwing that around on the tweet. I mean, on the messages here. So we'll confirm that in a minute. But back to Cooper Kupp just real quick. Like, I wasn't on the Cooper Kupp train because he's like 32 years old. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. But the more I think about it, it actually does. Because you brought something up yesterday I wasn't thinking enough about. The whole Tampa Rams thing, like bring somebody in that knows. You don't have a lot of spots to do that in. You're not going to just do that in and guys do that across the league. Like if you bring in, when you brought in Gus Bradley, who's going to bring in someone from Seattle, right? Like those kind of things happen in the league where you bring in the guys that know your system. And so Cooper Kupp, and by the way, Cooper Kupp would, at least for a year, if he could stay healthy, he does give you all those things that really you love about Christian Kirk, that tactician, that pro's pro, right? You know what he's going to do. You know he's reliable. You know you can trust him, all those things, instead of a new guy like trying to figure it out still. So, I think I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's probably cheap. Like it's pretty reasonable, right? He's not going to be that expensive by today's standards in terms of a 1-year deal or whatever it is, or maybe it's a 2-year deal.
All right, so let's just get right into it. Do you think Cooper Kupp would be an upgrade from Christian Kirk?
I genuinely don't think so.
Okay, well, I disagree big time with that, but go on.
And the only reason I say what I do with that is I say, I think he's still an ascending player, Christian Kirk. Like I think he's in his prime right now. I mean, he's 4 years younger, and I just don't see that he would put up that different numbers. Now he's a cheaper option for maybe similar production. I think I could buy that, but I don't think he's at this stage, Austin, coming off injuries at this age. I don't see that. I could be wrong about that. I just don't see that.
Okay. I don't have the numbers in front of me, obviously. I never do right now. But when did Cooper Kupp have his breakout year? Was it 2 years ago? Or was it? I think it was
3.
Yeah.
I think it was at least 3 years ago? 3 now. Yeah, that crazy 2000.
Can you bring up Cooper Kupp's numbers real quick from the past couple years and just tell me about that? But here's what I'm going to say about this, Brent. When Liam Cohen got to Jacksonville,
2021.
2021?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can you give me the numbers the past couple years with, obviously injuries play a part as well, but like what were the numbers after that? Like, did he have any like good seasons where it's like, wow, this guy still has something left in the tank?
Yeah, so he never eclipsed the 75 catch mark in the last 3 seasons. He's gone
Has he gone over 1,000 yards in any of the seasons?
Man, why is it so hard to find a guy's?
Just go Pro Football Reference.
Gosh,
I'll give you year by year. Stop getting on ESPN. Go Pro Football Reference. It's better.
I know it is. I bought
Kids
it.
these days.
We got 800, 750, 700. 6 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns.
Okay. I still think it could be a better get than Christian Kirk. You may disagree with me, Brent. I think Cooper Kupp, even with the injuries, because keep in mind, Christian Kirk has some injuries as well.
Oh, yeah.
So if I'm going to go with a slot receiver, even he's been hurt, and even though the numbers have regressed since that Triple Crown type of season, I'm still going with Cooper Kupp. But here's my point. When Liam Cohen got to Jacksonville, he was very adamant about saying, like, Trevor Lawrence is the guy, right? I'm excited to work with Trevor Lawrence. We see him. Well, we saw him. Maybe we saw him because we had to delete it, but we saw him on the sidelines talking to each other and everything, and like we know that it's a match made in heaven. They seem to be getting along just fine. We know how close Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk are, right? And that can't go by the wayside. When you make a decision like this and you essentially cut, let's call it like it is, the quarterback's best friend, that could come with some ramifications. That could come with some repercussions. The only way, being a new coach in a new system with Trevor Lawrence, who you just kind of met, and you go, hey, man, I know we're supposed to be like best friends here, and I know you got to trust me. We're going to let your best friend go, but we have another plan in place, and here's what it's going to be. That's why I'm not stressing about this. Because the only way that you cut Christian Kirk is if there's a backup plan in place, and maybe even a better plan in terms of upgrading that said position, that Trevor Lawrence would be cool with this. They didn't just pull the rug on Trevor Lawrence and say, hey, Christian Kirk and you are really good friends. Well, see ya. He's gone. That's not how the conversation's going to go. The conversation's going to go, hey, man, we have to make a hard decision here, but it's best for the team. But here's what we're going to do instead. And you give him the plan B. Now, is that Cooper Kupp? I'm not sure. I think that could be a wrinkle. I think Cooper Kupp coming here, at least in Trevor's eyes and Liam Cohen's eyes, maybe not the fan base's eyes, but in a lot of people's eyes, could be an upgrade from Christian Kirk. So that's where you go, yeah, we had to let your best friend go, but you know what? Here's what we got in return. Or maybe it's another free agent, or maybe it's going to be in the draft. My only point that I'm trying to say, though, is yes, Christian Kirk was let go, and I'm sure it rubbed Trevor Lawrence the wrong way a little bit, but they didn't do it without another plan in place.
Yeah, listen, I think that's great. That's a good thought. I think that's a nice fix. By the way, Cooper Kupp comes with a lot of respect if you could do something like that. There are other things to factor in here, like Brian Thomas Jr. is going to play some of that slot. It sounds like if you listen to Liam Cohen. So he's going to slide in there. You do have Parker Washington. Same thing, right? So that could play it. Or you do have the draft to go get younger and cheaper at that position. I think Coach Rip keeps bringing up the dollars part of this, and that's business. That's cool. But I will tell you this. I think there's more legs to the Kupp stuff today than yesterday for me in a big time way. And part of this was I wasn't a big fan of 30 plus guys coming in here at this stage. Didn't make a lot of sense. We joked a little bit yesterday. If you're older than Udinsky, you're probably not coming in here. You got a few of those guys already. But I also think we have to, what they just did in this offseason, if you look at the coaching staff that they built a coaching staff that talks Liam Cohen's language. They really put an emphasis on that, to be able to hit the ground and go fast and to make the transition and the education and the communication better for this offense and Trevor Lawrence. Well, the one way to also help do that now in the player procurement stage of the year is, well, go get somebody that knows the offense, right? And a guy like Kupp to be able to speak it and play it and educate other people on it. Even a guy like a Brian Thomas, a young player, or other folks like Parker Washington and the rest. So it'll be interesting to see. Hey, maybe the bigger story right now is the retirement of Mitch Morse. And this was always in play. In fact, I want to, maybe in a commercial break, I'm going to see if I can hustle back and figure out a way to I asked him about retirement, I'm pretty sure, right at the end of the year in Indianapolis. And I forget exactly what he said at the time, so I'm going to try to find that. But he says, the things I'll remember and cherish most about my career are the relationships and bonds I created with my teammates, both on and off the field. Nothing can replace that. I will miss it dearly. I want to thank the Chiefs, the Bills, the Jags for 10 unforgettable seasons. Most of all, I want to thank my wife, Caitlin, my children, Kennedy and Deacon, for their constant love and support on the journey. Look forward to spending more time with them as I navigate retirement. Mitch Morse, I thought he was the best of the free agent class last year. I thought he brought a lot to this football team. I thought he was pretty good as a player at his age at 32 years old. And I also thought he was a tremendous leader. I mean, that dude, I don't know him from years past or anything else. We spent 1 year around him, and he was awesome to deal with in the locker room through a very tough season. He was a guy that was so mature, and he articulated what things were going through. He put things in perspective. One of the great guys I've heard in the locker room, by the way, be able to immediately put disappointment into perspective and articulate it to the media. That's a hard thing to do. but he was really good at doing it. And you talk about pros pro, but that comes with, here's the thing. How many times have I said that in the first 20 minutes of the show? The Jags lost two pros. I mean, they lost two big pieces when it comes to that. And you know that's important, Austin, in a locker room. So they'll have to replace now not only Christian Kirk in that capacity, but also Mitch Morse. And now everybody's bringing up, what do they do at center? Do they start chasing the Bears and compete with them, who are trying to fix the dish, by the way? Drew Dahlman, the latest rumor to go to Chicago. They already got two interior guys, and now could they, two offensive linemen, could they go get Drew Dahlman, who's set to hit free agency from the Atlanta Falcons, seems like the hot guy on the market? Would the Jaguars get in that sweepstakes? Does that make a lot of sense to maybe go after Dahlman from Atlanta?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll be honest with you. Yeah, I'm sad to see Christian Kirk go because he was a pro's pro, and when he was on the field, he did contribute. But, injuries and everything, the chance to upgrade. And once again, we talk about this all the time. Like Liam Cohen, I get it's Trevor Lawrence is great for him, but he doesn't owe him anything, right? Like Liam Cohen wasn't here when they signed Christian Kirk. So, and it's also the reason I feel like with Parker Washington, who we've all seen in training camp, we've all seen in preseason, where we have high expectations. Well, maybe Liam Cohen and company, really, they don't, right? Because they don't owe Parker Washington anything. When we talk about Mitch Morse, this one hits differently for me, though, because I think he was the most consistent and the best thing on that offensive line. And he came, like, number one, once again, a pro's pro. You alluded to it, Brent, knew how to handle himself in a locker room, how to handle himself in front of a camera. And you hate to see a guy like that go, right? Because through this entire draft process, through this entire free agent process, we don't have to worry about the center position, right? Like, okay, well, do you address interior offensive line? Is Walker Little going to be the guy? We're asking so many questions. What's going to happen with wide receiver? What's going to happen with Evan Ingram? The center position was the one position that I wasn't worried about, that I think a lot of people weren't worried about, because you had a guy in Mitch Morse who could hold that spot down, at least I thought, another year. Well, he retires, and now that spot opens wide up. So to me, this is even a bigger deal, in my opinion, than Christian Kirk, just because you had a sure thing there at center. You had something that you could point at and be like, all right, this is the guy. We don't have to worry about him. Just show up, do your job, and let's focus on other positions. And now we're kind of back to square one again on this offensive line.
Hey, Hamby, we thought for sure, right, they would draft a center at some point, probably in the middle rounds, early to mid rounds, because even we knew Morse, this was it for him if he was going to play.
Yeah.
This wasn't going to be a long-term thing. So maybe one more year you squeeze out of him. And we wondered that. I mean, we openly wondered, hey, he could retire. Certainly in that boat, the sheriff kind of situation, right? The last couple of years, you get to that point, you play a decade in the league at that position, you are beat up. And he was beat up. He even told us way back in preseason in the production meeting, I remember him saying, he's like, listen, I'm not the same guy I was 3-4 years ago. Like, it's just, it takes a toll on you. Yeah. But I think I've still got enough to help and be good enough to play. He admitted that, which I thought was kind of cool, because most people are in denial about that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But it shows you where he was at. Bottom line is, the Jags were probably going to pick up a younger center at some point in this draft, we feel. Does that now move that up even more? Does that bring Luke Fortner, who was with Cohen, back in play in Kentucky? Or does that now put them in a Drew Dahlman or whoever, I don't even know who's out there in free agency at the center position. Yeah. Do you go chase that kind of player to go get a core player on the offensive line?
Yeah, if you want to, get everybody riled up, you just tell them that, hey, the Jags have one center on the current roster.
I thought about tweeting.
And his name is Luke Fortner. Look,
I mean,
I might still
Alex
tweet it.
Mack still available, Brent? Is Alex Mack still a thing, or was that like a decade ago?
Jeff Saturday, or
Well, sorry to interrupt you here, Hamby, but I'm gonna just let me say this about Alex. I had forgotten. I knew it was Alex, right? And I had forgotten Max name.
That whole ordeal.
But I don't think everybody remembers that whole ordeal.
I don't.
Right? And so that's
why it's a deep cut. It's a deep cut.
It is, but so by the way, Dahlman's like 26 years old, and I don't know how old Mack was at the time.
He had to have been older. You talking about when he signed with the Falcons after the Browns?
No, I'm talking before he signed with the Browns.
Oh, before he.
So he was coming out of Atlanta. The Jags actually. I'm sorry. He was with Cleveland, right?
Right.
With Cleveland.
So he's with Cleveland, and the Jags go after Mack, and they actually offer him a deal, but that he was under a free agency where the Browns could match the offer. And so they did. And then there was another chance before Atlanta got him to get him again. And the Jags were basically like, okay, he's kind of old now, right? Whatever age he was at that point, he was a little old. I think he went to like another Pro Bowl or two or whatever right after. He still played really good ball. This actually really does, Austin, remind me of that situation just because Atlanta's tied in right here. And by the way, this dude's like 26 at Dahlman, the guy everybody's talking about. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, I know this guy's great, but he's like the hot free agent center guy at 26 years old going into his prime. So it actually does remind me of the Alex Mack situation a lot. They tried twice to well, they had two opportunities to get him. One, they got matched and trumped by Cleveland. They couldn't do anything about it. They really tried to get him. And then the other one, 2 years later, he's too old. And they didn't get him.
I'm just happy because, listen, every once in a while, I'm going to try to put some bait in the water, and I'll see if I can reel Brent in here, and try to get a big fish. And Brent took that Alex Mack reference hook, line, and sinker, man. So we're on the same page today. I'm glad to hear it. But Hamby, I didn't mean to cut you off, man. Please finish your thoughts, dude. Sorry about that.
That's all good. Look, yeah. So Luke Fortner is Luke Fortner. However, I agree that he is the one stability that I think Anton's stable. I think we want to see better play from him. But I think a lot of these guys are more stable than we give them credit for, at least the fan base does. However, losing Morse might hurt for this year, but at the end of the day, monotony was the biggest curse here for the fan base. It was just the simple fact that we were running it back outside of Sheriff, that 4 of the same last names you were going to see out there were going to go out there on the first drive of this next one. That wasn't okay with a lot of people. So just the fact that we're going to be able to replace 40% of the line and there are going to be new faces is going to be a plus. The other big plus is when we're talking about how much we want to, fix in the run game, how Cohen scheme. At the same time, it's a lot better, if you're able to, it's a lot easier to draft a guy who you can look at his tape, look at what he did in college, or look at what he's done in free agency and say, hey, my scheme matches that player, his skill set, his play style, his athletic ability, instead of trying to take your scheme and try to implement it on a 32-year-old who's already, contemplating retirement, who already knows this is it for him, right? It's a lot easier for you to go out and coach and teach that to a younger guy. So I think just as far as success rates of how Cohen is able to get his guy in there, that's a plus. As far as that's a saving grace here. As far as I'm not a huge. I would like to see Morse back. I liked him, but going forward, I think this is a good thing.
Well, and you just hit on something. We got to take a break, but you just hit on something about the. Now you will get a refresh of sorts. Kirk, I thought, was that guy to be able to do that with. We knew Sheriff would be, right? So you're right. You had right guard, and other than that, man, you're going to take an offense that won 4 games and has really struggled the last couple of years. You're just going to say coaching and scheme are going to fix everything. Mm-hmm. I think this makes it feel different. Now you've got 3 positions. You've got Morse. You've got right guard. You've got Christian Kirk. I mean, you could still get Evan Ingram here. We'll see. I still think Evan Ingram's going to stay. Especially from the whole Richard Angulo staying to he's a tough guy to replace. He's a matchup nightmare. How many of these guys do you want to shed, right? I mean, do you really want to do it? And by the way, $13 million for a tight end that's gone to Pro Bowls isn't a bad deal. That's not a bad deal. And it's not a $24 million cap hit type of situation like it was for Kirk. So I do think you have that now where you can get a little bit of a refresh. And it's not just, this coaching better be good, because it feels so. And you set the table, Austin, too, right? James Gladstone, protect the dish, set the dish, protect the dish, all that stuff. Well, now you get to remake the dish. You now get to remake that.
Yeah, and it's funny because I do agree with Hamby with what he's saying here in terms of you can get a new guy in the draft or whatever the case may be. You can plug and play him. And you may even get an upgrade. You may not lose a step, right? We saw this. We didn't see an upgrade, but we saw this in Philly, right? It took him a little bit, but then eventually he learned. I forgot the guy's name, even the Philly center, but he figured it out and he won a Super Bowl. We saw it with who was that guy? Creed Humphrey, isn't it the guy from guy in Baltimore?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, he figured it out right away, and I understand all that. But also, I saw a guy with Brad Meester, who people say was past his prime, helped Maurice Jones-Drew, and I don't know, whatever year it was for Brad Meester, become the league's rushing leader, and this is what, back in 2011, I think that was, or 12, whatever the case may be. But like, Meester was on the back nine of his career. He was banged up, and he was still a big part of why Maurice Jones-Drew was the rushing title leader that year for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I think the center position, it's one that, you can have longevity, and it's not necessarily the biggest, fastest, strongest guy. It's more, it's between the ears of what you bring to the table. But yes, you can bring a guy in right away and not skip a beat. What I'm more disappointed in is that you're missing one of those veteran locker room presences, right? And this is why I think it's vital to keep a guy like Evan Ingram, because we can't let the past be prologue again, gentlemen, okay? We can't cut guys like Calais Campbell and company and Darryl Smith and then expect this new regime to come in and just turn things around. You need those bridge guys. And Mitch Morse, in my opinion, was one of those bridge guys. So he's gone now. So Brent, to echo your point, I think you have to keep a guy like Evan Ingram, because we've seen it on the play when he's healthy. We've seen him have Trevor Lawrence's back when he got cheap shotted. And that's the type of guy that you want to have on your team going forward now that you lost Mitch Morse.
I think it's a great point, man. And by the way, learn from your lessons. Calais, Mercedes Lewis, Darryl Smith, learn. Let's have a little history lesson here. All right? Don't get rid of too many of those guys. I do think they have a veteran team. They have enough of those guys still, like Josh Hines-Allen, and even Trevor's in that mode now, or Eric Armstead. You've got those guys, Foye Oluokun, but it's okay to have more of those guys, especially on the offensive side of things. And you just got rid of two big ones, Sheriff and Morse, widely respected across that room, and obviously Kirk as well. Ingram staying. To me, this almost guarantees Evan Ingram staying. Right?
I'm going to be honest, Brent. If Evan Ingram, for whatever reason, gets let go or he gets even traded, and I don't care what the capital is going to be for that, I'm going to start, right now, I'm trying to remain calm, right? I'm on 3 hours of sleep. I'm trying to remain calm, okay? But if you let Evan Ingram go, Brent, we haven't seen this in a while, and Hamby, get it ready. We're bringing back the panic button.
Oh,
okay,
that's right. Hit the
I'm
panic button.
Listen, I don't like threatening anybody. I don't like threatening a new organization, especially an organization from, Brent's got connections with Rhode Island and all that good stuff. Seems like a great guy. I don't want to bring up the panic button just yet. But if Evan Ingram is going to be a casualty and you're going to let him go, the panic button is getting hit, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
Definitely. All right, let's take a time out. We'll come back. A big thing's happening. We knew this would trickle in, right? And now it's starting to take shape. We knew it would over the next few days. Now the Jags are starting to take shape, some on their own, some on Mitch Morse's part. He retires. Christian Kirk gone. Brandon Sheriff obviously gone. He probably retired too, quite frankly. And then what else happens for the Jacksonville Jaguars before the league year starts next Wednesday? We talk more about it. We've got a bunch of stuff going on, by the way. Gator Nationals, we've got Ron Capps coming in. That's always a fun conversation. We're going fishing a little bit today. Plus, we got a lot of football talk and a new article from Daniel Griffiths. First and a third for DK Metcalf, plus play him a bunch. No, thank you.
Get the panic button ready again, if you even entertain that idea.
Yeah, don't do that. I don't think they're doing that. We'll be right back. When it's time to get a new car for anyone in your family, just remember, nobody but Nimnick, the #1 Buick GMC dealer in Jacksonville. Get the latest price breaks on 2023 and 2024 models, or the newest 2025 vehicles in the showroom on Phillips Highway, or shop online at NimnickBuickGMC.com 24 hours a day. GMC Sierras, Yukons, and the redesigned Acadias, or get the all-new redesigned line with Buicks. It's nobody but Nimnick, and part of the reason why is this is a first-class buying experience here at Nimnick Buick GMC. You're not just a customer, you're a friend. This is about getting a vehicle that best fits you and getting you on the road, and also helping you and your family down the road. Nimnick has a treating you right guarantee, courtesy, respect, fairness, and most Buicks, GMCs, and Jacksonville's only Car Bravo dealer, nobody but Nimnick. Who has put in the most years and stands behind a better experience? Nobody but Nimnick. GMC, we are professional grade.
2024 provided plenty of memorable moments for the Jacksonville Armada on the pitch, including another conference championship game appearance for Tommy Krasanovich's under-23 men's team.
They sit in the dying moments.
Debuting this year for the first time, the girls in blue as the Armada fielded a women's under-23 side in the WPSL and made its presence known with some highlight moments.
Potential goal of the season.
Then attention turned to the future, with MLS Next teams representing the Armada badge in 3 age divisions this fall, including an under-19 squad ranking among the best in the state. Those teams are a big focus on Fleet and Footy, covering the big soccer stories each week on the Action Sports Jax 24/7 network.
I'll put one in the back of the net for you.
Join us for player profiles, fun interviews, and the very latest on the Fleet and all things footy. That's every Thursday at 2 p.m.
I've been telling you about CGC Water Treatment and Plumbing for a long time now. Their drinking water systems remove up to 99% of contaminants.
We've had a Connecticut water softener and drinking water system in our home for more than 7 years. You can see the difference whether you're washing clothes, the dishes, or what I like to do most, fill this up for some coffee every morning, and mostly all day. Remember, if you're not filtering your water, you are the filter. Don't be the filter.
Right now, you can save $500 on a Connecticut Premier Softener and get a free Connect Salt Monitor with purchase. The experts at CGC Water Treatment and Plumbing will test your water for free and determine your water score. Don't know your water score? CGC will find out and recommend the appropriate Connecticut water treatment solutions so you can improve it. Call 904-552-1242 or visit cgcwater.com. Ask about our 90-day love it or leave it guarantee. CGC Water Treatment and Plumbing, an authorized independent Connecticut dealer. Florida license number CFC 1432579.
There's a saying in sports, you can't win them all, but you can win a lot with good folks on your team. Like that one painter, First Coast. It's tough to beat the sun in Florida, so your home fades. It's tough to beat that HOA when they come calling. Beat the sun, beat the HOA with that one painter, First Coast. And it's a good time to do it. Less rain to work around, and painting in mild temperatures is perfect. After all, the paint bonds to the surface so much better. Give that one painter First Coast a call at 904-417-3557 or look them up at first-coast.thatonepainter.com. Fast estimate, guidance on color and HOA requirements, and the highest quality job you'll find anywhere. Be a big winner in your neighborhood with that one painter First Coast on your team.
When it comes to trucks, I know exactly what I want. And at Bozard Ford, they make it easy to get exactly that. Let's go make this truck a little more my style. With Bozard Built, I can create my perfect truck right here. Lift kit? Check. Premium wheels? You bet. Advanced lighting package? Oh yeah. The Bozard team works their magic. From bumper to tailgate, I'm making this truck mine. It's everything that I wanted and more. From the field to the gym to weekend adventures. This truck's built for my journey. Bozard Built. Customized for your lifestyle, built to exceed your expectations. Check out the inventory and available options at bozardbuilt.com. Unleash your dream ride. Customized, covered, and Bozard approved.
Welcome back to the Brent and Austen Show, streaming on the Action Sports Jax 24/7 network.
Well, how about this one? A little bit under the radar, I think, especially around here. Now you got Mitch Morse retiring. Christian Kirk is going to be released by the Jags. And Joey Bosa has been at it for 9 years now. Kind of crazy. Boy, Jalen Ramsey's been at it for 9 years, too. That's nuts that they've already been that long of a career. Bosa has really struggled with injuries, released by the L.A. Chargers. Do anything for anybody? I mean, it's a big name, but is a game left again? I mean, that's what I really warned people earlier this week. You're going to start hearing names. Name or game. It's really the name of the game this time of year. You've got to be careful to just get consumed by it. Listen, man, Jags need some help on the pass rush depth, right? Could Bosa be a play there, or is he just way too expensive even 9 years in?
Well, Yeah, this is the thing, Brent, right? Where I think if he would have agreed to take a pay cut or restructure his deal, the Chargers probably would have had trade offers by now, right? And probably would have pulled the trigger on it. It's just the fact of how much money he's making, and you have to ask the question, is the juice worth the squeeze? When he's on the field, when he's 100%, I think absolutely. But injury history and everything that goes into account, it's like, do we really spend this much money and risk it on this guy? So if the price was right, Brent, sure, why not? I mean, he his name carries a lot of weight despite all the injuries and everything. But for what he was making with the Chargers, you can't even come close to paying him that right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it really makes a lot of sense given everything that I've kind of said. But yeah, both sort of 49ers with his brother. Man, maybe that makes some sense, right?
Oh, that's what I figured.
And yeah, it doesn't do much for me either. I'm just asking the question. I think I don't know what they're going to do at pass rush. I don't know what they're thinking completely there. And are they going to address that in the draft? Is this a moderate free agency kind of play, like it was last year a little bit with Travis Gibson?
Until it wasn't.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, and let's be honest here, like the Gibson thing wasn't, but they traded him away, and it's not like he played for Seattle either. So, he never played. I'm not sure. Obviously, signing him wasn't right, but they traded him for what they get in return, like a 6th-round draft pick, and the guy never played or something. So the whole thing was weird. I get it, but is that what you do? Like, do you go after that kind of player as a depth player, a guy that's been around the block a little bit that can jump in and help out, or you? And also, probably address this in the draft too. Because you need help on that. They have not fixed that depth on pass rush. And so that's why anybody who becomes available, you kind of ask this question, all right, are the Jags interested?
Yeah, I mean, it's that important of a position. And we echoed this last year where, I think the plan was Eric Armstead was going to fill that role, and we saw how that turned out. So it still needs to be addressed. I wouldn't be opposed, and, I'll be honest, there's some good, talented edge rushers that are going to go, probably top 25 or so. I don't want to see one there just because you have to ask how much are they going to play their first year in Jacksonville if you were to draft them that high. But if we're talking about a 2nd or a 3rd round pick that can come in and rotate and produce right away, I would be all for it. I haven't even taken a look at in terms of edge rushers and free agency and everything, what that's looking like in terms of, can you get like a middle of the pack player and offer him kind of a low deal and bring him in for a couple of years? Like I haven't seen any. I have no idea who the free agents are, Brent, in terms of edge rushers, but that could be a possibility as well. Or you go with both, because we've talked about it many times on the show before. You can never have too many edge rushers, so it's got to be addressed, whether in free agency or the draft, but something that needs to be a primary focus this year, because last year we thought it was. And then you let Travis Gibson go. I think that was in the preseason, right? Or was that?
It was late preseason. It was right before the start of the season, yeah.
And then you move Eric Armstead to the edge, and none of that works. So, yeah, it still has to be a big need.
So here we go. We got the NFL free agents, according to Spotrac, Dermont Jones, DeMarcus Lawrence, Josh Sweat, Chase Young, Amenahu, DeMarcus Walker. From from right here in Jacksonville. He's in Sandalwood kid. He's 30 years old now. Wow, he's been in the league. He's had a nice career
with him in the offseason.
Marcus, a good dude. And like I thought like that could be a guy that you bring in. I remember when he got released, I think by Chicago like a month ago. I ended up putting that out there. But could he be a possibility? Maybe. Marcus Davenport. I don't know why they include Fatukasi as an edge here. That's kind of interesting on this deal. But Dante Fowler Jr., by the way, bring him back.
The reunion.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what makes DeJuan Smoot's now 30 years old, FYI. Calais Campbell at going to be 39. So, yeah, I don't know. Again, edge rushers, if you're out there, you're usually out there for a reason. Some of it's age, some of it's lack of production, some of it's just cost, right, at this time. Who knows what it is.
But, Brent, let's not get it twisted, though, either. Just because you're out there, one team's, scraps is another team's treasure. Look at Zach Bond. Look at Kyle Van Noy. Like, there's been plenty of examples of you've offered these guys, mid-level contracts because, they came from a team that they weren't really doing anything in. You bring them in on your team, and they make the biggest difference in the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great example of good. But in Jacksonville, we don't usually get that.
I'm trying to be hopeful here with the new regime, Brent.
That's a good idea, but it's like one team's. I wouldn't say trash, but I mean one team getting rid means of like
trash. Yep, here we go. You heard it here first.
Would mean like stay away because they're cutting them for a reason or getting rid of them for a reason. Maybe that's a new segment brought to you by Republic Services as we talk recycling here on the show. There we go. Which player would you recycle that could really...
Trash it or cash it.
Yes. Who was that? Was that Middleton? We just steal that segment from him? Did he drop that segment up on ESPN 690? I think he did. I think he did.
That's
hey, Middleton, we're just going to steal it. By the way, he probably stole it. He probably stole it.
It's a pretty common phrase.
Yeah, I know. Hey, back to receiver real quick on the Kirk front, because I just want to get to this part. Do you have faith in Parker Washington at all to emerge? Like, he's done some nice things, but do you have faith in that? Could they rely on that? Go younger, obviously cheaper, and develop him. Maybe there's something there. There have been some moments for Parker. I think the consistency certainly has lacked, but let's be honest, so has the opportunity. The opportunity has been inconsistent for Parker Washington, too. The other way to look at it is, does this bring receiver into play at number 5? Ted McMillan, Travis Hunter, does that bring
Golden?
Those guys, Golden maybe at some point. Again, I'm not sure it's at 5. It could be a trade down opportunity, whatever else. Or, if you're getting Travis Hunter, it's not a trade down most likely. It might even be a trade up to get him. So do you think because of the Kirk move, the Jags' odds and percentages of going to get a first-round wide receiver just went up?
That's a good question. My gut is telling me no. My gut is telling me, listen, whether it's Cooper Kupp or somebody else as a wide receiver, I think they have a plan more in free agency, Brent, than they do in the draft. Now, I think if free agency falls through, then obviously the draft's going to be the thing. Maybe it's McMillan, maybe it's Travis Hunter. But the one thing about the draft is that it's always a crap show. Like you think it's going to go a certain way and it doesn't, right? Like, sure, we think that, quarterback's going to go really early on and everything. And, Travis Hunter will probably go top 5, top 6, whatever the case may be. Like, that's what we all think. But sometimes it's not what we know. And then we all get surprised by things. So I think with a move especially the timing of it, I think with a move like Christian Kirk letting him go right now, there's a move in free agency. And if there's a move in free agency, that means that you don't necessarily have to make that move in the draft. Now, like I said, if it's Cooper Kupp, maybe it's somebody else. I'm not saying it's Cooper Kupp. It could be a laundry list of players. But if you don't get your guy, or if you don't have that plan in place, or maybe it falls through, maybe there's more money elsewhere the player goes to, well, then, the draft is going to be the thing. But until I see free agency play out, Brent, I can't sit here and say, well, Christian Kirk's gone. Now they're going to draft a guy in the first round.
Listen, I think receiver was always interesting to begin with. I think it just becomes a little bit more interesting. Do I believe Ingram's going to be gone after this year? I think he's staying now. I really do. But they have to. They're going to have to address tight end at some point, along with Brenton Strange. The Gabe Davis thing, it makes a lot of sense. First of all, he's 25. The contract is not bad this year at all. So I figured they were keeping him from the jump. And obviously they have Brian Thomas Jr. But they're going to have to address pass catcher. And the reason why we say Ingram in this conversation is because he's really not a tight end. He's more receiver, the way they have used him over the years. So I think already the Ted McMillan idea, the Travis Hunter idea, these were good ideas. These are real possibilities. Now, it doesn't seem to make sense with everybody talking about trenches and offensive line and everything else. And there are also bigger needs potentially with Mason Graham and the defensive interior, or even a corner like a Will Johnson or whoever else. So you can make the case for a lot of things, and we already have started to do that here in this offseason once the dust settled. But I do think it's certainly the odds went up to some degree in favor of them landing a receiver at this very moment. To your point, do they bring Cooper Kupp in? Do they make a move? We'll see what it looks like in the next week. We'll know a little bit more. But if they don't, then the odds even increase beyond that, right?
Listen,
and I'm talking the first round now. you've got a bunch of picks, so you can go get receiver in the third round and really go find somebody. You don't have to go get a number 5 pick and take receiver, but it certainly is exciting if you were to do that and match Brian Thomas Jr. with another young guy, that Trevor Lawrence on his big deal, remember now. And this is why it makes financial sense if you want to put some of the pieces together. While you have the quarterback on the big deal, you get the guys in pass catching on the young rookie deals. Makes a lot of sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense, but also, like, once again, I mean, like, is there some realm of where T. Higgins could be an opportunity if you throw the right capital at, since, like, it's like I said, there's some possibilities out there for the Jaguars. I'm not going to sit here and say that the odds of the first round just went up for the wide receiver until we see how free agency shakes out. Now, if they don't get a Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins, whatever the case, if they don't get anybody, then yeah, guess what? I'm expecting to see a wide receiver first, second round, hands down, or else, what are we doing? I get Kupp right now, and I see some of the comments, even though it's super tiny in the chat because I can't really see, but I understand that there's a lot of animosity towards Kupp these past couple years with injuries and everything and lack of production and the emergence of a 5th or 6th round pick and Puka Nacua kind of outshining him. I get all that. But let's keep in mind here, who's our GM now? Gladstone. Okay, like, I feel like Gladstone wouldn't put his name on somebody, especially because, like, I get Cooper Kupp's not going to be getting T. Higgins money, but he's still going to be getting some sort of money here. Like, let's not get it twisted. I feel like Gladstone wouldn't be putting his name on Cooper Kupp and maybe trying to bring him over here unless he knew for sure that could work out, right? Because that's a decision that if you're a GM in your first go-around where you bring somebody over from the team that you were just at and it doesn't work out, that's a giant minus then on your resume if it doesn't work out. So the fact that I think he's willing to gamble a little bit, if this is truly the case, and bring a guy like Kupp over, it makes me excited because maybe he knows something that other people, like, the casual Jaguars fans that don't, that we see Kupp, the stat lines and everything. We play fantasy football, but maybe we don't know the whole story. So that intrigues me a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're getting a lot of comments here, and now I can't remember what the previous one was, but I'm going to go with Coach Rip here because he brings up Tyler Warren from Penn State, right? And out of the combine, people aren't talking about Warren as much as they were talking coming off like the college football season. It doesn't feel like, but maybe I'm just missing the conversation. It brings up something that's interesting. Could they potentially draft a guy, and I'm not saying that you'd probably move back and everything else, but go get your future tight end and a guy like Warren, and also move like Ingram into more of a receiver position? Could they utilize him that way? And that way you'd be able to Brenton Strange, Tyler Warren, and then even use Ingram. I mean, who by the way, is a receiver more than a tight end, as we know. It creates a mismatch problem. I mean, could they view something like that for 1 year where they try to kick Ingram out more from that receiver position?
Well, let's go ahead and go to my my conversation that I want to do on Monday. On Tuesday, in terms of draft position right now, which is the most coveted for this team if you go offense, right? Now that we lost Christian Kirk, like, is wide receiver the most important piece? Is tight end the most important piece? And I'm going to throw this position out there as well, and people are going to, be in shock and awe of it, but I think it warrants at least consideration. Is running back and Ashton Genty a possibility? Because I get it. You have Tank Bigsby. You have Travis Etienne. But you've seen what a dynamic bell cow can do for your team. You just saw it in Philadelphia with Saquon Barkley. We've seen it a little bit. He's not dynamic in terms of catching the ball, but we've seen what Derrick Henry has been able to do now in Baltimore. And it seems like the league is starting to shift now towards running the football a lot more than passing first. And we saw what Bucky Irving was able to do in Tampa Bay, where it's supposed to be a running back by committee. Bucky Irving shines, and all of a sudden it's the Bucky Irving show. He's really the fantasy darling of the entire season. Do you consider, like, maybe trade back a little bit and get a guy like Ashton Genty and be like, hey, you know what? As far as running back's concerned, we got the best one, maybe one of the best ones already in the league. Let's pull the trigger on him. So my question to you, Hamby, and you, Brent, is in terms of the hierarchy, in terms of the rankings on offense, what is the most important position right now in the draft for the Jaguars to address?
It's a good one.
I mean, you had till Tuesday to figure this out. I put this in the chat, so don't act like you're taken by surprise here.
I think it's right guard.
Well, I know, but I've had a lot going on, so I hadn't really thought about it. You think the right guard spot is the most important spot?
As far as a void that we have to...
Well, center just became more important than right guard.
Nah, I think right guard still, I would argue, because I don't know. I just think, look, you have to build out from within, and I'm never gonna put running backs as long as I got two guys that at least I know with their floor, I know what I'm gonna get from them. I'm never gonna put that above a position where I don't even know who we're gonna play. Right? So I mean, part of that's just like the logistics of it. We don't have a guy there. So running back to me is, automatically out. Receivers out because that room is empty as of now, but we still have guys that we know who are going to be out there who will produce. And then I think right guard is probably a more important position right now than center based off of the guys that are available. And yeah, I don't think I would put center over right guard.
Then what about Tyler Warren and like the tight end position? Where does that rank?
Like last.
Really?
Yeah, I trust Ingram and Strange. That's
okay.
Yeah, so here's the deal for me, okay? First of all, it's not right guard. And center and Genty and even Tyler Warren, all those are not happening at 5. None of those are happening at 5. You would trade back.
I'm saying the first. Yeah, I'm saying the first.
And I get
round,
it.
Man.
I get it. And I understand. I'm just saying, like, there's no way. Now, receiver, you're not necessarily trading down. Like, if you want to get receiver, you might get that guy there.
Oh, no, I wasn't saying that you're going to take a center at 5. That's not even...
No, I know. I'm just telling you.
That's like... I'm like, holy... Okay, I was just making... Yeah, you're not going to take a guard at... You barely ever take a guard at 5, much less a center.
Well, we did this, but the other day, like, the recent guy I think that was picked in the top 10 was Sheriff, who that was the most recent guard picked in the top 10, and that worked out pretty well. He's a good right guard, right?
Nelson drafted.
Not like in the top 10, I guess. Definitely I think it was definitely a first rounder, but he's not in the top 10. So just to answer your question, I have a little, I'm not thinking Genty at all. We did the Fournette thing, and I've been the biggest cheerleader of Fournette making a huge difference for the Jags in 2017. It was massive.
Got him to the playoffs.
Got
him to the AFC Championship game.
But it doesn't build you for down the road or long-term success getting running back in the top 5, right? Or even early in the first round, especially when you can find it in so many places. And this regime specifically, knowing that they got Bucky Irving in the middle round and he did what he did, I hardly can see them going to get Genty. It just doesn't seem to make sense at all to me to go get a Genty when you think you have 2 pretty good backs and you got guys in the 4th round in the past. And by the way, I don't know where Kyren Williams was picked, but I think the Rams have done this too.
I think he was 5th or 6th.
Yeah, so I would just be like, big X.
But hang on.
Ain't happening.
Yeah, but real quick though, like, yes, you have your Kyren Irvings, you have your your Kyren Williams, you have your Bucky Irvings. I get all that. But then you have your upper elite echelon. You have your Christian McCaffreys, you have your Saquon Barkleys, you have your Derrick Henrys. And I'm not saying Genty's gonna be that, but there's a lot of people that think he could be that realm. And if that's the case, and once again, you gotta stay healthy, so don't get it twisted. I get it, Christian McCaffrey's been hurt and everything, but when these guys are healthy, you see what they can do for their team. So there's no intrigue. And I get it. You have Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby, who we know, to echo Hamby's point, we know what they can do. But if you have a chance to get an absolute elite runner, here's what I'm afraid of, guys. And I'm not saying bring on Ashton Genty, but I'm afraid I'm going to see Genty go to, I don't know, pick a team, say the Titans. And all of a sudden he's going to be the next Saquon Barkley and willing their team to win. It's that's the last thing I want to see. Cause I'm well, what would that have looked like in Jacksonville? So that's just my only worry, but please continue. Sorry.
I'm not worried about that at all. If you're going to take a running back in the top 15, then go right ahead, especially if you have as many needs as the Titans do.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm just saying any team in general, any team that gets him, all of a sudden gets a Saquon Barkley, and it's now all of a sudden they go from a mediocre team to a team you got to watch out for simply from one draft pick.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we'll see. I mean, listen, I get the logic by you. I just don't get the logic here. I'd be absolutely floored if they were to go that route. I think the Tyler Warren one makes a lot of sense. Nelson was the 6th overall pick. Thanks, Raul. Appreciate that. I didn't realize he was that high. What narrative am I churning? I missed the early part of that Hamby's burner. But I think the Tyler Warren thing makes some sense. I really do. And then I think the receiver makes some. So to answer your question, I think it's receiver.
Okay.
I think it would go actually tight end because I can see the future.
Really?
That's a little shocking, but okay. Go ahead.
I think it would go center, and then I think it would go running back. That's the rank. And the reason why I say it about receiver guys is because, you know me, I'm stuck on this whole deal where the Jags, what do you have that nobody else has or few people have in the league? Where are you better than them? It's hard to be better than other teams in Jacksonville, quite frankly, in a lot of different spots. Well, I think they have edge guys, and this couple of edge guys in terms of Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker, that few can match up with those two guys in the league when you couple it together, right? Everybody might have one, but do you have two? Well, what if you had Brian Thomas Jr. and a Tet McMillan or a Travis Hunter? You could then start to say what Cincinnati's been able to say over the years with a T. Higgins and a Chase, or maybe even Seattle had a little bit where you get a couple of those guys. So I think that's why I lean toward receiver, because I think you can then start to say, hey, we're helping out Trevor. We're getting younger at the position. We're getting cheaper at the position. And we're also going to compile something that few in the league have. We got maybe the Waddle and Tyreek Hill of this next 5 years.
No, I mean, it's definitely the Joe Burrow effect with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, and guess what? I wouldn't be mad at that combination. So I agree with you. Are we sure, is Travis Hunter playing wide receiver? I haven't been reading a lot about the draft news.
Yeah, well, now
is he going to be a wide receiver?
Now there's a lot of shift toward him playing wide receiver at the combine, coming out of the combine, that's where he's going to land. Yeah, it's primarily as a wide receiver.
Okay, cool. I have no idea. Real quick, for me, I actually agree with Brent here in terms of I think wide receiver might be number one overall, just because I feel like Cohen wants to make a splash here. And once again, you might address it with Cooper Kupp, you might address it with somebody else, but even I feel like if you get Kupp, does that do enough for your offense to go, okay, we got Cooper Kupp, Gabe Davis, and Brian Thomas Jr.? I'm not sure. So I do agree with Brent. I think wide receiver is number one. I'm going to go with actually, if we're talking strictly offense here, then I'm going to go, I think, interior offense number two, and agree a little more with Hamby. Although Tyler Warren would be fun and makes a lot of sense, I think if you have a guy like Evan Ingram right now, you can say, okay, well, we have Evan Ingram another year, so let's go ahead and re-up on that the following season. So I'm going to go wide receiver. I'm going to go interior offensive line. I'm going to go running back, and then I'm going to go tight end.
All right. That's interesting. I like that question. It's an interesting rank. And, of course, Coach Rip and others are really jumping in here on the chat. OLDL depth, period. Currently lack a starter at 2 OL positions. Well, that's true. I mean, that's why we're getting to this point. But, again, those are positions where in center and right guard you usually don't take number 5 overall. Traditionally you don't. Like a safety, right? We need a safety. You usually don't take that number 5 overall.
Malachi Starks.
Cornerback you can. And then receiver you can, but you don't have to. So it's an interesting way to organize the chart of what you need, but also when you say what you need, where do you get it? And where you get it at number 5 versus if you go down to number 18 in a trade back scenario, which most people love to do if you're the GM of any team, well, then that brings a lot of different other positions in play. Now that brings center into play and right guard into play a little bit more, and maybe even tight end into play. And potentially if an Ashton Genty is slipping in the draft, maybe even brings him into play at that spot. So, listen, there's a lot of ways to go, and those are new holes that opened up just today with the retirement of Mitch Morse, and obviously yesterday with Christian Kirk, now that we know he's not going to be a part of it in Jacksonville, and we already know the Jags needed a little more help on the line. They need defensive interior help. They need safety help. They need corner help. So there are more holes now on March 6th than there were on March 4th. Hamby's burner. Yeah, we need everything. Well, the funny thing is the Jags don't need everything, but they did open up some holes now in the last couple of days, which is always an interesting deal when you're not a good football team to have to go replace even more. And now the Jags are kind of forced into that.
Brent, what's refreshing through this whole conversation the past couple of weeks of what the Jaguars need? The one thing that they don't need is a kicker. And that feels good to say.
Well, they don't need a kicker or quarterback.
Or a punter. Quarterback. Yeah, quarterback too. But
or a long snapper.
Or a long snapper. Hey, special teams is not looking too savvy. And
we're locked in.
We had some years with Josh Lambo with that whole thing where we had to burn some sage because we were just, recycling and revolving doors of kickers, and now we're pretty confident we got who we got. So at least there's that.
Yeah, we should have the Republic Services recycling segment back on the kicker front. That would have been like a whole deal.
Can you imagine instead of the making the fly on the wall, all the kickers that we had? Man, talk about recycling and wasting paper.
Should probably put an RIP wall up here.
Yeah.
We'll be back on the Brent Austen Show.
If you don't see a pit, it ain't legit. When you hear that, you think Bono's Pit Barbecue, a staple in Northeast Florida now for 75 years. A place that feels like home with friendly service, a meeting place for friends, family, or business occasions. On the menu, the corn nuggets are a favorite in our house, but there's something for everyone. Sandwiches, platters, salads, sides, desserts, and family feasts. You see Bono's all over the place in Northeast Florida. You know, there are almost 20 locations in the Jacksonville area now, so stop on by, sit down, and dine in with Bono's. You can also take it to go. There are drive-thrus in many of the locations, and they have delivery options too. Just download the Bono's app to make things easy. I signed up for the loyalty program, and you can too, to get special offers. If Jacksonville is home, few things feel more Jacksonville than Bono's Pit Barbecue. Celebrate 75 years and many more to come. Bono's Pit Barbecue. If you don't see a pit, it ain't legit.
For the game day hustle and every day in between. Juggling my show, Jag Social, to going under the Friday night lights and a social life, it's a daily tournament. But this ride, MVP status. The all-new 2024 Lincoln Nautilus isn't just my car, it's my personal locker room, office on the go, and VIP lounge on wheels. Let's talk tech. My profile remembers everything from customizing my dash display to setting the ambient lighting and my signature scent. And wireless charging, essential for live tweeting scores. Whether I'm packing for a beach day with friends or heading to the gym, there's space for every passion. After dominating all day, this becomes my recovery zone. The massage feature is like having a personal PT on call. Life's a non-stop game, but with this ride, I'm always on my A game. The 2024 Lincoln Nautilus. Drive your passion.
You trust CGC to make your water great, and now you can trust CGC with your plumbing needs as well. Fast, convenient scheduling, licensed and insured. A quick call away at 904-552-1242.
You never know when you're going to have an issue with a shower, toilet, or maybe it's a sink that sometimes is easy to fix. All right, let's be honest. I'm not fixing anything. I'm totally staging this because when I have a plumbing problem, I call CGC Water Treatment and Plumbing.
Trained professionals, transparent pricing, customer satisfaction. Small problem or even a bigger issue. Right now, you can take 10% off any water heater. The experts with 25 years of experience at CGC Water Treatment and Plumbing can do it all. Call 904-552-1242 or visit cgcwater.com. For a limited time, CGC is waiving the trip charge on all related plumbing calls. CGC Water Treatment and Plumbing, an authorized independent Connecticut dealer. Florida license number CFC 1432579. It's the place we party in football season with Jaguars All Access. Welcome to String Sports Brewery, everybody. Say hello to our guest tonight. That is Trevor Lawrence. You can bring your party or event to String Sports Brewery in Springfield any day and any time. Rehearsal dinners, corporate events, birthdays. Here at Strings, you can enjoy the inside area and the outside area. Good for any weather, good for any occasion. Watch the games, play the games, shoot some hoops. Beer? Yeah, they have that. Plenty of choices. And sure, this is a brewery, but Strings is also a restaurant, and the food is fantastic. A full menu made from scratch meals. And if you need String Sports Brewery to help with a party at your place, they cater too. Family, beer, food, sports. Spring Sports Brewery in Springfield.
Welcome back to the Brent and Austen Show, streaming on the Action Sports Jax 24/7 network.
Oh, yeah, we got the NHRA Gator Nationals coming up this week. Actually, it started. I mean, it's underway now in Gainesville. Gainesville Raceway, the place to be. Visited a little bit yesterday with Ida, and now we get Ron Capps, the legend, in the studio once again. Always nice to stop by here in Jacksonville as we get a big week at the Gainesville Raceway. And once again, check it out. We tell you all about it. 330-plus miles an hour just in under 4 seconds. Oh, what a ride. What a thrill. But you got to feel it there at the Gainesville Raceway. Check out tickets, NHRA.com. And, well, there is the legend Ron Capps. And here he is, right here in the Action Sports Jax 24/7 Network studios. Probably one of the first guests that visited our studios last year when we started this whole deal and launched it. And welcome back. And your biggest fan is out in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
That's Austen Lane. Yeah. He's joined us from out there.
You too, man. Great to see you.
Yeah. So how's it going?
Good. Yeah, we're ready to kick it off. It's that time of the year. Obviously, we start the season now in Gainesville, and Gator Nationals, it's such a historic event. I mean, it goes back so many years. So I've got the privilege of having a couple Gainesville Gator Nationals trophies on my mantle. Yeah. And now as a team owner, it'd be nice to do that again.
That would be good to do. Why is it? We do the same thing with like the Daytona 500, right? Kicks off the season, yep. Super Bowl racing and NASCAR, and it really does. You can sense like it means something different. We have the Players Championship in golf coming up here in Jacksonville.
There's a lot going on
right next week, and that kind of has the same thing. It's not a major, but it's a huge tournament, and it really means something to win. You get the sense that here at Gainesville, and this stop particular is a big one to put on the mantle.
Yeah, like we talked last time, there's so much going on. I mean, the state of Florida has got to be is just happy with everything. Every weekend there's something cool going on, and so yeah, it's nice to roll into town, and a lot of fans make it a destination event. I mean, it's not a bad place to fly to this early in the year, especially when all the snow and they're getting. I'm sure, Austin, you got it up there. I'm sure it's cold.
Oh yeah, but you're not lying, Ron.
Yeah, so it is it's a big event for a lot of reasons. I mean, mainly we used to kick it off the Winter Nationals in Pomona. That was always a historic place to start the NHRA season. But the last few years it started here. This race has always brought the CEOs, the presidents of your sponsors and corporations that are involved in our sport always come to this race. So now we kick it off, and included my sponsor, they're all coming down tonight. So we got a big dinner with all the people that write the checks that we represent. So it makes it a little bit bigger than most races.
So it's a convention of sorts in a way. Pomona, by the way, is that like one of the fastest tracks? Because I see that it seems like people set a lot of marks.
It's funny. It's one of the oldest, and you see it in all the old movies. I mean, it's the same track surface. It's actually downhill a little bit. When they built it, it's actually a slight bit downhill. But really, it's weather. I mean, you get the atmospheric conditions. If you get some cool air, the unfortunate part about Gainesville, and we don't see those record runs unless it's cool out, is you get some humidity. And the humidity for these nitro engines, we make 12,000 horsepower, but any amount of water in the air, it takes a little bit of power away. So you got to compensate for it as a crew chief. So it brings a little different look to the track when it's hot, it's humid, that sort of thing. But it sure makes the racing good.
Yeah, Ron, go ahead, Austin.
Yeah, Ron, obviously, like when we talk about for instance, like NASCAR racing, right? Like everyone is better at certain tracks. Some drivers are better road drivers, some are better like oval, and you got Bristol's different, everything like that. Like when you talk about such a short duration, for a race and everything, like, do you still feel that where are all tracks made the same? You mentioned humidity a little bit and weather. Like, do you have certain tracks that you just gravitate towards where it's like, man, I like these conditions better? And what tracks out there are like, oh man, I'm going to kind of dread going here because we always have problems with this one?
This used to be one of those ones where I was like, oh my God, I want to get a trophy here. I drove for Don the Snake Prudhomme for 10 years, and I finally got my first win with him at this track. But I was like, is this going to be one of the tracks that I really are going to focus on trying to win in my career? But there's certain ones, you're right, and it's weird. I've won, let's say, Brainerd, Minnesota is a track. It's a huge event every August, and I just happen to win there a lot. And I've done it with different crew chiefs, so I can't really blame it on that. Or just certain areas you unload, and you just seem like the mojo in that area is just going to go your way. So, yeah, I'd sure like the Gainesville Gator Nationals to be that. But it just seems like Gainesville makes you work for it a little harder than most tracks.
Interesting.
Yeah, and, I don't think you have to be better at a certain way, or there's guys, it doesn't seem like automatically feel like they're going to do good at the Gator Nationals. There's not a list of racers, Austin, that I can look at right now, Top Fuel or Funny Car, that they just always win Gainesville, like some of the tracks we go to. So I think it really sort of evens the field out, and it's the first race of the season. Everybody's got brand new looks and sponsors and some new crew chiefs and a lot of new stuff. So that's the other cool thing about the fans coming to this race is they get to see a lot of the fresh, brand new paint schemes and things like that.
There's a lot of unknown.
A lot of unknowns.
Like in Austin, that's really wild. And I think I might have probably said this over the years, but it just, when Ron brings that up, it's so cool that it's in these three huge events that we have really in February and March. Daytona's very much like that. It's so unpredictable, right? At the 500, you have no idea who's going to win. I mean, from long shot to favorite, it sounds like the same at Gainesville Raceway, and we got the same thing next week at the golf course. Like, Scotty Scheffler is the best golfer in the world, and he won back-to-back last year. First time anybody's ever won back-to-back. So it's like this unpredictable nature of these events right here. And part of that, by the way, is the weather. The weather does play a role in February and March, so kind of fascinating.
Well, and Ron, I was going to ask you too as well, because you mentioned it's the first stop of the season, right? So you're still kind of working out some things, maybe trying some new things out and everything. Like in a sport of football, usually, it takes a couple games to get acclimated, and all of a sudden you kind of know what kind of team you have maybe by week 5, week 6, right? And you just want to stay healthy and keep rolling. In your world, like, when do you know, like, do you have a special car? Do you have the right guys in that pit that are going to maybe give you something special? Or when you know, like, hey, man, we may have to change some things around. Like, when do you know, like, okay, I kind of know what kind of car we have this year?
Well, NHRA gave us a special 2-day test session this week. So teams were allowed to park early. They opened it up, and they prepped the track like they would at a race this week. So I was in the car yesterday and Tuesday, and it was like a regular race. There were so many cars there testing. So we had that, and we made good runs, but you saw some cars that aren't at the end of last year that weren't great, and they made some good runs. A month ago, we were in Bradenton, Florida, speaking of Florida, and we won a special all-star race. So we feel like we've got a great start to the season. It was a special event. It wasn't NHRA sanctioned, but it was a very cool event at a track there near Bradenton, and so we already feel like we've got a win. Well, we did get a win, but we feel like it's a good step to coming here to Gainesville and kicking off. We got a lot of data, same conditions, that sort of thing. So I feel like, to go to your point, you do sort of know if you're going to have it or not, especially at this race, being that we got to test this week. But again, conditions, and we look at the weather. I mean, there's chance of rain, there's chance of clouds coming in.
The wind's been crazy this week.
It could be, and it's going to be maybe 78 degrees and humid if it's not raining. So it's a very variable type of thing for a crew chief.
Can you feel if you're going 339 miles an hour or 335? Like, can you feel the difference? Like,
I can't turn my head to the left very good. My neck is jacked. This is 30 years of driving a funny car this year. Like Tony Stewart, obviously, he came into our sport last year, and I've known him forever. I've done dirt racing with him. And I have my chiropractor I see weekly when I'm home. And it's when I know that we run big speeds, and we've gone 339 before, it's when we hit the parachutes. Because it's 6 Gs. It's more than anything on the planet, even more than space shuttle pilots when we are going down the track. But when we hit the parachutes, it's -9, sometimes -10 Gs. And we have a head and neck device that got tethers to hold. But that's when you know is how hard those hit when I hit the parachutes. Because it could go 310, and you're like, wow, it still felt pretty fast. But when you go 335, 336, and you feel that tether when the chutes hit, then you go, okay, that was going fast.
Wow. That's a wild how you can tell it. By the way, NHRA.com for tickets. Friday, Saturday qualifying. Sunday, the big race day for the pros. First of 20 races during the 25 season. And kids 12 and under free. You've been to the pits before. Every ticket's a pit pass.
Yeah, man.
You've been in this guy's pit.
Yeah.
Smell it. Yep, man. Smelling some of that good old, what do they call it? Nitro and everything, man. Yeah, and I was blessed enough to stand right by the starting line when he took off, man. And it's like we talked about yesterday a little bit, Brent. Like, it's one thing to watch it on TV, but to actually be there and just feel it, where your body's almost ready just to kind of collapse because there's so much power and just so much energy going through those race cars, man. It's amazing. And Ron, let me start by saying this: it's refreshing to learn that even when you're doing like an all-star classic or whatever that was, that you're still going full speed, because in a lot of professional sports, we don't see that. Yeah. Not to make fun of NFL players or NBA players, but yeah, we just don't see that. Man, a question that I have for you, Ron, is, I think in your sport, like reflexes and obviously the mind is so important, right? And I come from the world of fighting, where we see a lot of guys hang on way too long in terms of, getting a little too punchy and everything, and they lose those reflexes. So from a job like yours, where, yeah, it's a short race, but it's so hard on your body and everything's about reaction, how do you stay on top of it?
I just try, these kids are coming up, younger people are coming into our sport just like everything else, and you hit it on the head. Our drag racing, for a fan that's never been, I mean, every ticket you buy, you go everywhere. It's like going to a Jaguars game and going and hanging out on the sideline in between plays and hanging with the players and going back up the grandstands. It's a very, very cool thing in that respect. But, yeah, you've watched drivers throughout the years, the Kenny Bernsteins, the Don Perdomes, people that they know when it's time to retire, but all of a sudden they come back. They miss that, right? We're going to have Rampage Jackson, about Chuck Liddell. A lot of people come out to the drags and stand like you did between the cars. And it is the same sort of thing. And Dom the Snake Perdome told me, he goes, you're going to know when it's time. Because I was like, how did you know? You're the snake. How did you know when it was time to get out of the cockpit? And he says, you're just going to know. You're going to all of a sudden not feel that urge to get in the car and go 300 and something miles per hour. And I haven't had it, thankfully, but I still have the motivation and the fear of losing. And I get motivated when these younger kids come up because reaction time's so important. And I'm almost 60 years old, but I still feel like I'm 20. So I train that way. I work out that way. I try to get myself prepped that way. And I feel like sometimes the experience is a little better in the long term than some of these kids' reaction times might be a little better than and it's a constant battle, Austin, man. You got these younger guys, they got great reaction times. You're like, man, I used to have that. What do I got to do to fix it? And you try to find these ways to get better as we get older. And it's a daily thing for me.
Well, it's the team ownership part. Was this just a natural transition? I mean, is that a natural evolution for you? Because then it will at least feed a lot of that when you do decide to get out of the cockpit.
It's the best and the worst of it. Yeah. Because I lost to John Force last year, and I was specifically remembering in the car, I did the burnout backing up, and I'm thinking about these invoices and these things on the business side. I'll never forget. And then I'm like, get that out of your head, right? I roll up the stage of the car. He beat me on a hole shot. And I was so mad at myself because I'm like, how can you let that creep into your brain? I mean, we have this amount of time when you're staging these cars, you're about to step on the gas of 13,000 horsepower and be catapulted, 3.8 seconds. You better have your mind right. You better be focused. And I still felt like I was. I've done it for so long. But it's happened a few times, and I was in the car yesterday testing, and I let that creep into my brain again. And that's been the toughest part for me. I love the ownership side. I need to figure out a better way to get it out of my head when I'm driving.
That's interesting. Well, by the way, I feel you. I mean, that happens in the middle of a show sometimes. Totally different than going 335 miles an hour. But you do. I'm thinking about invoices too. Sometimes
it's these little phones. These phones will drive you crazy.
Hey, well, you're right. Depends what text you're getting at the time. Now, hopefully, you don't have that in the car. But three-time funny car champ, by the way, 2016, 22, and 23. Ron Capps with us and talking some Gator Nationals coming up at the Gainesville Raceway this weekend. NHRA.com is the place to get tickets. It's really that's interesting that you say that. Do you think you have impacted this sport so much? Can you impact from the team ownership for the next however many years? I don't know as much, but do you feel like you can make an impact, or is it just a thing to do for you that it's okay if you don't make an impact on the whole sport, you're making an impact on your team? How do you look at it?
Well, I mean, it's leaked out a little bit, so maybe I'm breaking news here, but we are bringing an additional car out next year, 2026, with a young girl driving it. And it's going to be a lot of attention. It's going to be a lot of hoopla. She's in the sportsman categories now, but so that's going to be a big deal for me. And I don't know how I'm going to approach being an owner of driving one car and owning the second car and having all that on top of it. But you look at John Force, it's been a multi-team owner. The biggest names in the sport have had more than one car. So I don't know yet. I'll let you know next year.
Yeah.
But it's going to be exciting. But that part has been fun for me to think and look at these younger kids coming up and try and keep an eyeball on who should get a chance in my mind. And I'm not hiring this girl because she's going to have $1 million to bring, like a lot of sports nowadays, especially NASCAR and IndyCar. If you don't have a few $1 million or wealthy parents or something to bring, you're not going to get a ride. It just doesn't happen anymore. And so I'm going to give that girl a chance, and I'm going to do it backwards. We're going to bring a sponsor to that ride. And so it's going to be next year. I'm going to have a lot more to tell you about. And I don't know if it's going to be good or bad, but it's going to be a lot.
Yeah, that's a little step out though, which is cool. Like that's good. That's how the sport grows. That's how you evolve. That's how you stay fresh.
Yeah, trying. I mean, John Force, he's sort of retired now after his accident, and I was just told yesterday that my publicist said I'm now the winningest driver that's active. I wasn't with John Force still driving. I was second on all-time wins, but now, and I feel like I've got a torch to carry. Even John's at the track, but he's not driving. That hit me because I don't feel like I'm that veteran. I still feel like I'm 20 and I'm trying to find a way to win.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be a little different.
You're in this seat. You're less Trevor Lawrence, and you're more now Liam Cohen and James Gladstone. By the way, as we were talking about the new front office of the Jags, he's up to date now on this stuff.
Oh yeah,
he's keeping up to date on these Jaguars.
I love it. Yeah,
I like it, man.
We'll see if it works.
Rob, real quick, man, I wanted to ask you before we let you go here, man. I'm really big into mental performance and sports performance and just, kind of finding that flow, if you will. And once again, we talk about like a sport like MMA, a fighter, 25-minute fight. I know that you're a big fighting fan, so you can understand this. But usually, when you step in that cage, okay, then you're locked in, you're ready to go, and you're focused. How does it work for what you do? Like, is it when you actually get up to the line? Is that when you lock in? Is it when you get in your car, which you were cool enough to let me actually kind of experience a little bit? I couldn't even really fit in your car, man. And I thought my grandma's Ford Taurus back in high school was hard to drive. I can't imagine. I mean, dude, I was cramped and I was claustrophobic in that bad boy. But when do you like lock in and go, now it's go time? Is it at the starting line? Is it when you get in that car, we put the helmet on? Take us through that whole process.
That's another great point too. I mean, I got to work the Super Bowl. I'm a Niners fan. I told you guys last year, so I got to work the Super Bowl, the last two, on the sideline horn, the parabolic mic.
Which is awesome, yeah.
Which it still blows me away that every down, the amount you could feel the ground shake, and it reminds me a lot of our sport. Like when the ball is hiked and there's so much movement of these big dudes hitting each other. Mm-hmm. It reminds me a lot of what does a normal play take? 6-7 seconds, and it's just mayhem. And it reminds me of our sport. So the preparation right before the ball's hiked is the same as the bell ringing. And I love going to the UFC fights because you sense that they lock the cage, the bell rings. You're like, these two guys are in there. There's no way out, and you're about to do what you've trained to do. And so for the car, I'm in it. Once I get strapped in, that's the time to answer your question. Before that, I got music playing in the tow vehicle, but once I get the helmet on, you're in there and you can't be messed with. You can hear the crew on the radio. You sort of go into that zone. And then when they fire the car up, that's the next level. That's when you could literally for the next 2 minutes cut the air with a knife, because if you don't pay attention, your right foot is on top of 13,000 horsepower. Not only could it hurt you, it could kill you or the person next to you. So you better have your wits about you. That's why the invoices in my brain were not a good thing, and I got to fight to get this stuff out. But there's been times I did the burnout and I backed up and I got a song in my head and I'm humming to myself, and then I go, "All right, stop it! You got to get that out of your head."
Yeah, get locked in.
Yeah, it's funny how a lot of the things are the same, and a lot of different sports and people I talk to, it's very much the same.
That's wild. You guys have experienced it, you two, in that sense, a lot more than this guy has. It's pretty wild, though. The reason why you still do it, my guess, is that 2 minutes when you could cut the air with a knife.
Yep.
Because you can't duplicate that anymore.
No, you can't.
Right? Although the parabolic mic gig is way better, way safer, man.
And I can hear conversations I could never repeat some of them. But
I bet.
Unbelievable, yeah.
I bet. That is awesome that you do that. That's really wild. Ron Capps, always great to have you in, man. We should visit with you a little bit more often than just this time of year. Check in anytime. Look, I mean, Austin's coming in from a hospital in Wisconsin. Wherever you want to go. Take your time.
I'm in.
Jump on the show. NHRA.com for tickets. Good luck. And good luck over the next year. Can't wait to see how the team ownership stuff goes over the next year.
Well, last time I was in here, I had really good mojo, and we did real well after that. So I'm looking to use that again if I can.
We hope. We hope you get the bump.
Yeah.
and one more thing, Ron, man. I mean, just you keep doing your thing, man. I'm sorry I'm not there in person, man. It's great to hear from you again and see you on video. But I'm gonna say this, man. They say that eventually Father Time catches us all. But dude, you go 300 miles per hour, so we ain't catching you anytime soon, man. So just keep doing what you're doing, and let them keep chasing you, man. But just keep doing your thing.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, that is tough to catch, even for Father Time.
It is, man.
Right now.
Time travel.
Ron Capps, have a great weekend, man. Appreciate you. When we come back, we're going fishing a little bit, too. Plus, just a reminder, Christian Kirk, obviously the news there that he's going to be released, but Mitch Morse retires from the Jacksonville Jaguars, the center. Jags now have a hole on the interior at center and right guard. So that's the big story here today, also on the Brent Austen Show on the Action Sports Jacks 24/7 network. You check it out anytime, actionsportsjacks.com. Get to the Gator Nationals this weekend, folks, NHRA.com. It is a thrill to be there. You've got to feel it. You just can't see it.
The Tom Bush family of dealerships, they've been serving customers in the Jacksonville area for 55 years. They've been your go-to spot to get and stay on the road since 1970, and that's still the case here in 2025 and beyond, even if the cars have changed just a little bit.
Check out the sleek line of vehicles of the future. That's right, electric vehicles. Tom Bush offers a full lineup of reliable electric cars with state-of-the-art service facilities. Like the new VinFast, Tom Bush is among the first dealers in the entire country to offer the VinFast, and let me tell you, this thing is sweet. The good folks at Tom Bush have all the info on charging, service, tax credits, and everything you need to keep your EV running smoothly. BMW, Mazda, Volkswagen, Mini, and the newly offered VinFast. There's something for everyone at the Tom Bush family of dealerships. Ready to join the Tom Bush family? Stop by the showroom or check out the inventory online at tombush.com.
People helping people. It's at the core of what Alive Credit Union is all about, and it's been that way for over 70 years. From the start in 1954 to today, the mission remains to inspire financial wellness and give you a financially fit lifestyle. Alive Credit Union and its employees are committed to not only serving their valued members, but also our community here in Northeast Florida. I had a chance to see that commitment firsthand as Alive partnered with our Action Sports Jacks 24/7 team to bring you Armada men's and women's soccer broadcasts. Inside the 18, it is a shot, and it's a goal! Chloe Chivers! And that connection to the community continues with Alive Credit Union's support of the Police Athletic League of Jacksonville. Alive Credit Union's commitment to our community also involves serving the financial needs of all first responders through the recent merger partnership with City and Police Federal Credit Union. Join the community and become a member of Alive Credit Union today. Find out the many ways you can be inspired in financial wellness at alivecu.coop.
For 60 years, the Bob Hayes Invitational Track Meet has provided competitive events, and we're also happy to provide scholarship opportunities too. Join us for the annual Hall of Fame Gala March 13th at the Potter's House and at the James Day Middle School Meet at UNF March 14th.
There they go.
And don't forget the annual Bob Hayes Track and Field Meet at UNF Saturday, March 15th. Get tickets and info at bhitm22.org. For vendors and partnerships, call 904-222-1075.